Hi there, and welcome to Talking True, where I speak to near death experiencers, mystics, healers, and people waking up to the truth of who they are. And on today's show, I have a very special guest. Her name is Kelly Fox. She does tarot reading, she's an astrologer, and she's a poet. And we're going to be diving into the really beautiful theme of weaving the magic. So if you want to find out how to weave magic in your life, then don't go anywhere, stick around. So Kelly, it's great to have you joining me today. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Talking True.
Thank you, Julie, for joining me or for having me. I appreciate it.
So, I always like a good story, and I know that viewers love to hear the story of awakening. So that might be a great place to start if you're comfortable. Do you want to kind of speak about what got you started?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been some years in the making, and I've seen a lot of transformation of my journey throughout the whole time. And I almost always want to preface when I start speaking, like, forgive me for crying, but I don't and I won't. I'll just say if I start crying, it's naturally a part of who I am because my journey has really been about um, discovering the superpower of my own vulnerability and like oversensitivity. So, in around 2016, 2017, I had finally like hit my breaking point with having relationships with other people in my life who didn't appreciate my sensitivity, and I couldn't appreciate it for myself either, was what I finally ended up seeing. So in around 2016, 2017, I had like really dove headfirst into like self-discovery in any way that I could find it. I think it started with Myers-Briggs personality test. And I was doing those kind of things all the time. I'm a very analytical type of person as well as being sensitive. So I want to see every layer and level and every reason why. And I was really on a path of figuring out like what was wrong with me. Why was I so sensitive? Why was I so different from other people? And why could I not just do what other people did and feel how they did? And honestly, I had prior to then been on a journey of trying to go numb. I had a drug addiction problem when I was 21 in my early years because life was painful as a very sensitive person, and I really wanted to escape. I was kind of following in the path of my alcoholic father's footsteps in that way. I got clean in around 2011, and then ever since then, it was like a journey of, all right, well, let's trace back the roots. Let's figure out what's wrong. Let's figure out how to fix it. I was in counseling on and off for many years. I was in Narcotics Anonymous for many years. So I've spent a lot of time in different, like trying to get into different perspectives, trying to see myself through different lenses, basically, to learn everything that I could to figure out, again, at the time, I thought what was wrong with me. And then I found astrology, and this was in 2017, shortly before I found out I was pregnant with my first daughter. I found astrology and I found Abraham Hicks right around the same time. And Abraham Hicks, something that she had said had become like somewhat of a mantra for me, that everything was always working out for me. And it was like the most difficult thing in the world to believe for a time. And then I was about, no, I wasn't pregnant yet. My father had passed away, and we didn't have a really good working relationship. This is when spirituality started to enter. He was an alcoholic when he was living, and near the end of his life, we didn't really have a relationship anymore because I was sober and clean and I couldn't afford to be around him for my mental health. So he passed, and when he did, though, I felt the relief that he was experiencing. I felt the burden that he had been carrying in his humanity and how much of a struggle he was having. I felt it leave. I felt it leave him. I felt it leave me. And this was really my first experience with like a God or a higher power or a grace, grace. Um, and when I had spent that time in Narcotics Anonymous, I had come to find like my higher power was the concept of love. So when my dad passed and I felt all this love step in, it was like the foundational building blocks of like, all right, I trust that there's something good in the world. Like, I trust that all things have a purpose. I trust that things are working out. And even if it's not the way that I think they're supposed to, or the way that I want them to, because it would feel better right now, or any of those things, it doesn't mean they're not. And my dad passing ended up opening a lot of doors for my personal healing, for my spiritual healing, for my recovery of self, for my rectification of my relationship with him, even though he was passed, and so many other things. So fast forward a couple months, I have another experience with this whole everything is working out for me thing. And this one was like the big one. Well, one of the first big ones. It was, I was about 4 months pregnant. I got fired from my job, which was the only job I've ever been fired from in my life. I was 4 months pregnant and I was managing this collision shop that I did not want to be doing. It was like the worst job. I didn't like it. So I get fired from this job, but I was in the middle of like purchasing a house. And so the finance company calls and I'm no longer working. So I lose the house. Fast forward after like months of what the heck, what's going on? How is this? It ended up being that I wasn't meant to have that house because wasn't meant to have that mortgage. I was meant to spend my pregnancy not working. I was meant to go through all the things that I had and then later not be saddled into the mortgage with the partner that I had at the time, because it just would have been worse. And at the time I was like, this is what I want. I want this house. I want this thing. And it wouldn't have been for the best. It took me a long while to see that. But eventually I did. And it was like, oh, okay, more trust in everything is always working out for me. I want to have a hand on how it's being orchestrated, which will lead me into the weaving part. Um, so then my daughter was born. And when she was born, she didn't breathe for 15 minutes. And she ended up spending the first 30 days of her life in the NICU. And on day 5 of her life, the neurologist told me she might not make it home, that she had suffered such severe brain damage that she may never breathe on her own and may never make it home. And at this point, this was when I reached out to God, to Creator, to Source, to Universe. Like, it was both a break all the way down in desperation, like begging, please let me have her. And it was meant to be that she stayed. It was meant to be that she lived. It was meant to be that she got healthy. But it was also meant to be that I was to have that experience, to learn how to trust when there was nothing, no concrete evidence to trust, that there was no medical evidence to trust. It was just that I had to trust love. I had to trust that love had a plan for me, and that no matter what it looked like, it was going to be for my best and highest. And here's where the Weaving the Magick comes in, because I can explicitly remember sitting and I was expressing, I was pumping milk for my baby who was in the NICU who might not make it home. And I'm sitting and there's this spider that started crawling on the wall. And I'm watching this spider in this like state of almost numb, like the smallest little shred of hope left, but almost numb. And I'm watching this spider and it's crawling and it's crawling and it stops. And I look right at it and I just, all I could get out was it just said, I love you. And I started crying and the spider started walking again. And it was in that moment that I realized like the whole universe is communicating with me and I can, anytime I want to, ask for comfort, ask for reassurance, ask for the symbolism, ask for the messages, ask for something else to come in and remind me that everything is always working out for me, even and especially when it doesn't seem like it is. So that whole experience, my daughter made it home after the month. She progressively got better. Everything was really like picking up and I'm like, okay. And I had started praying every day. And my version of praying is just saying thank you. It's just saying thank you and being appreciative, and asking for help in any way that I can get it. Please help me live in right relationship today. Help me experience the beauty of today. Help me see what it is to be appreciated about today. And so that's how I was living, appreciating and loving. My partner at the time seemed to be the trauma of our daughter's birth sent him in a different direction. And I was propelled towards my healing, and he was not. So there was a rift happening. And at the same time, I was realizing that my sensitivity, my vulnerability, my ability to share these experiences I had been having with my daughter and with my faith and my belief system was helping other people around me. And it was compelling me to speak. And that's something that I had never done before. I'd been so sensitive and so shy and so secluded. But this trauma really like cracked open the shell of who I was, and finding love at the root of this trauma helped me grow right up through it. So in around 2020, slightly before the pandemic hit, I was working on formulating my service of astrology and tarot services. And I came up with the name of Grow Through the Wound for that, because it just felt right. That's what I had been doing. That's what I could see I could help other people do, namely in the same ways that I had been helping myself previously. The Myers-Briggs test, all those things. It was basically like a process of self-identification. So I thought, all right, I'll use astrology and tarot to do this. And when I started reading for other people, I realized like, wow, I'm really gifted at this storytelling thing, and using my vulnerability and my struggles and my challenges in life as a touching point to help people tell their own story and formulate a different perspective through it. Sorry, I feel like I've been rambling for quite a while, but all of this backstory basically leads me to the Grow Through the Wound was birthed. I started getting out. I started doing more things. I built my confidence in who I was. And at this point, I no longer was compatible with that partner because he kept going further into his wound. And despite my efforts to help, I learned this in addiction and recovery. You cannot help someone who doesn't want to be helped. You cannot help them heal if they don't want to heal. It's not possible. So I put all of my focus into becoming the role model that I wanted my daughter to have, the role model that I needed when I was younger. I wanted to be the adult that my inner child needed then to stand up for me and say, no, you're allowed to speak. You're allowed to be happy. You're allowed to do your thing. You're allowed to continue growing through the wound. So do that. So I left. I started basically a new life. And then after a couple of years of working with the concept of growing through the wound, I had finally, all of my writing started coming out in poetry, all of my experiencing and processing of my daughter's birth trauma and leaving that partner and saying all the things that hadn't been said for years. And I mean, all of it. It was the dad alcoholism things, the my mom wasn't around when I was a kid thing. It was the I was too sensitive thing. It was all of that. And I started processing it through poetry. And it felt like every time I started writing a poem, it was all in metaphor. It was always in metaphor. It was never the direct experience of, it was something else. And that's when the weaving thing came in. And it was like all of these different threads. And I'll backtrack and finish with one spot and then we can move on. It was just before I left my old partner. And it was right around 2020, or maybe it was just before. I had this altar space and I was just there. I had some music on, I had some incense lit, and I kind of had my eyes closed and I was just in my body, just feeling the moment, feeling the presence. And I all of a sudden, and it was like that, it was just all of a sudden, the first time it had ever happened, had this picture, this image in my head of what I now know is the Taurus energy field. And I had no idea what it was at first, but and my eyes were closed and I'm seeing this energy just swirling into itself and I'm seeing it spin and I can see all of the aspects of how it moves. And all of a sudden, everything was making sense to me. It was making sense that I had to watch my dad be an alcoholic so that I could see his pain and suffering and then start to go down that road and then backtrack because I could see all of the reasons why everything fits together, and I could see how it was being woven, how it was all just one moment of different experiences by different facets of one universal experiencer that shows up as all of us, and that I was graced with this opportunity to have the exact experience that I was having because I was designed exactly for it. And there was nothing wrong with me. There never was, there never will be. And it all just clicked into this most beautiful thing. And again, when I saw it as like this tapestry that was being woven and unwoven and rewoven over and over again. And it comforted me more than anything has ever comforted me in my life. And I was like, that is weaving the magic. That's what I want to do. I want to help people see that. I want to help people feel that. I want to help comfort people with that, like it does for me. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Beautiful. Wow. That's
Mm,
quite the story. Thank you for sharing, Kelly. I really appreciate that, as I'm sure viewers will too. But I'd love to just kind of unpack, because, you said
absolutely.
a lot right there.
Yes,
And it might be helpful to unpack a few things,
absolutely.
kind of dive in. But one thing I do want to say is everything you shared with respect to the pain points, all the things that you felt burdened by, and feeling like you don't fit in, or what's wrong with me and all of that. I think that's a really common story with most people,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you are sensitive and empathic and you've got gifts. It's
Yes.
especially in the West, I think it's really hard for people
Mm-hmm.
that have any level of sensitivity, because you feel not only your own pain, you feel the pain of others around you. And
Yes.
and then when you're young, you don't know what to do with it, because we're never taught that is even a possibility, let
Mm-hmm.
alone, what to do with the unspoken or unacknowledged pain of our parents, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
or those around us. So all of that is, I think, very beneficial to understand, that
Mm-hmm.
for viewers, that this is really everybody's story, and that, as you so succinctly said, there's great value in the pain,
Mm-hmm.
because it's the pain always that gets our attention, right? I mean, for the most part, that's really the way it works.
Mm-hmm.
That pain suddenly kind of snaps us in. Well, there's usually two pathways, I would say. It either gets our attention and we say, I have to do something with this because I don't want to continue,
Mm-hmm.
or the other opportunity is to self-medicate through either antidepressants, drugs, or alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
So again, all of those things are really, I think, really common, especially in the West
Yeah.
and in the world as that we know right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I love the fact that you did your own inner work. First of all,
Mm-hmm.
you found a way through all of that, and then you also saw the way it was all connected, and that you recognize your own path and purpose through that,
Mm-hmm.
which is to help people in the same way, so that they can see that there is meaning and there is value
Mm-hmm.
in the pain and in their journey, and in those places where they often feel lost and confused and maybe overwhelmed, and all of that. So can
Mm-hmm.
I just ask, so if I was someone that was really, really struggling right now with
Mm-hmm.
anything, with a relationship, job, or whatever it was, or all of the above, and I reach out to you, and I've
Mm-hmm.
never had a reading before, or any astrology work, what would that look like? Can you just kind of describe that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing, if we're getting onto the call, I'd want to just say, is there anything that you need to talk about like right this moment? Because sometimes I don't want to, I just need to purge. Sometimes people just need to get out whatever. So I always open up a space for that, or ask if there's anything specific, because sometimes people will come to me and they've been researching or they've been trying and they just need somebody else's perspective on it. So I always start with, where are you at right now today? Is there any like burning desire for anything?
Mm-hmm.
Aside from that, I go right to, so in astrology, all the planets have correspondence as to, I even like to call them the parts of ourselves. I know that I'm a person that I've done a lot of parts work. The more that I separate pieces of my personality enough to identify them, see them, validate them, love them for each individual that I am, the more I can integrate them into the whole. So I always start with people by identifying, here's your sun sign, which is the way you function through the world. This is how you move the energy through you to like move about your day. This is how you actually function. The moon sign, though, is your inner emotional world. This is generally the part of you that you feel most connected with, but you don't necessarily let on, unless you've found out already that your vulnerability is your superpower. But most people are like, no, I'll just keep this to myself. I don't really want to share this. I kind of want to keep this tender. I go right to that. I go right to that. And I go also to Chiron is an asteroid that represents the wound. It is the mark of the wounded healer. The mythology around Chiron is him being unable to heal himself. So this is generally the stuff that people need a little outside insight on, or a little bit of help digging, or someone to hold their hand while they're digging, or someone to just hold space for the tenderness that's uncovered once you do the digging. So I look to those two parts in the chart to really, because I definitely don't want to, um, I don't want to trigger anyone's trauma that they're not ready to process. So I take a good look at all of the things that are aspecting or having relationships with those very tender parts. And then I'll kind of slowly gauge through questions and maybe some cards where that person's at and how ready they are to meet that. Because some people are ready to dive head right in, and some people really need to wade into the water. And I'm not trying to traumatize or re-traumatize anyone. But there's no point in dancing around anything else. We can do, I know for me, at the points in my life where I tried to adopt practices to like override my defunct functioning, it didn't work. I actually remember a part in therapy where I was actively using drugs and I was going to counseling, and the counselor was like, Kelly, you can keep paying me money, that's fine, but you're not going to get anywhere until you put the drugs down. Like, this is just a vicious cycle that you're not going to. So that's what I do first. I try to gauge where someone's at and their readiness. Like, do you just want a reading because you just want a reading? Or do you actually want to start the inner work? And that's no judgment, but it's two totally different things that we're talking about here. So,
Yes.
so that's my first part, is gauge where this person's at and gauge what they're ready to do. But if they are ready for some real deep inner work, I'll start basically introducing themselves to themselves through these different parts and pieces through the lens of astrology. And again, each of those pieces represent different things. So if you've got a specific goal in mind, you want to say you're well aware that your energy is out of balance and the more masculine parts of you have been running the show, and you really want to rectify the softer parts. Now I know I'm going to be looking at the moon and the Venus and different houses to kind of identify that. So depends on if they've got an aim, and if they don't, then I have another method, but I'll pause for you to interject another question.
Yeah, no, I just want, and so what would you need? What would you need from me?
Oh, sure. So all of astrology is based on the date and the time that you were born, and then where on the earth you're located. Those three factors draw up a chart where in the center of the chart is you located on the earth, and all around you is the planets within each constellation that they were at. And a lot of people ask about things, well, then if somebody was born on the same day, don't I have the same birth chart, or, twins in those circumstances? You'd have very similar birth charts. Some things move faster or slower. The fastest moving planets are the moon and Mercury. Your rising sign would also shift, even by a minute or 2 minutes difference is going to make a difference in a birth chart. So everybody's got different things, but the date, the time, and the place are what will create a chart. And then it's looking at the positions of all of those planets and all the angles and the mathematics of how they have relationships. That's interpreting a chart in its whole.
Oh, okay. So somebody did tell me that the time of your birth is really important to know. So if you have a mother who says, well, I can't remember what it was exactly,
Yeah.
That kind of messes the whole thing up, right? I would think.
Yeah. Yes. So there's depending on where you live and where you were born, there's different ways to track that down. I know here in the States, in most places, you can go to the county that had your birth certificate on file. If the hospital is no longer, available or whatever, the county should have it on file. If all else fails and you really can't find it, there are astrologers that do what are called rectification charts, that basically by a series of questions about timing and events and things in your life, they can narrow it down. I will say this, because I have not been able to find my father's birth certificate, and I've been really interested in getting his chart nailed down. I've played with it intuitively because obviously I knew my father pretty well. I could probably personally gauge some of those things. So I may be off by degrees, but I believe I've got so yes, you want to get your birth chart, your birth exact time as much as humanly possible. You could get a pretty good rough interpretation without the exact time, but somebody's going to need to know you a little bit better or spend a lot more time asking you questions, or you'll need to see a rectification astrologer to get that exact time. Yeah.
Okay. And then,
Mhm.
so let's say somebody has all of that information. Do you meet via Zoom, or is it a written report, or how does that kind of work? What do you
So
do?
I like to meet via Zoom. If you're local to where I live in Batavia, New York, I do meetups here regularly. I really like the personal interaction though. If someone prefers that I just look and do a write up, I've done that. I've done the look and do a write up for children's, like children that were just born, to kind of like, here's an idea of what their personality is going to be like, what's going to be important to them. They're going to want a lot of physical activity, or they're going to be more introverted type of thing. Those ones I'll do write-ups too. But when it's a person doing inner work that really wants, I like having those conversations because again, I like to get the feeling of what's most important to you to
Mhm.
guide me in what I'm showing you in the chart. Because I could look at someone's chart and talk about it to them for a month. I mean, and keep coming up with new things. So I like to have the conversation to keep it focused on what you want to get out of it.
Great. So the thing is if you did it via Zoom, for example, you could record it, right? And the person
Yeah.
could have the,
Yep.
yeah. I mean, I'm really with you. I used to do, I still do soul purpose readings, but I used to do soul purpose readings that with a great long written report, and the written report would take me 10 times longer than the 1 hour session.
Yeah.
you know, with a 1 hour session, you can, speak to and move through, all the information fairly swiftly. When
Mhm.
you're writing it, it's got to be articulate. You've got to make sure the grammar's correct. So,
Yeah.
so all of that can be certainly a lot more work than a Zoom, a Zoom 1 hour session. But if you have the recording, that's great because you can keep referring back and then hearing parts that maybe you missed the first or second or third time.
Definitely.
So that's really great. So all of that is available via your website, I'm assuming.
Yes. Yep. At
It's all
weavingthemagick.com. And that's magic, Magick. It just had to be that way.
yes,
So,
yes, yes, yeah.
yeah.
And so do you do with your astrology reading? Does that also includes tarot, or is that a different
Yes.
service?
So when I'm doing astrology readings, I'll weave tarot into the readings if I'm looking for some more clarification, or because with astrology, everything is like you could be on the high road of things or you could be on the low road of things. So if someone's not understanding why they're functioning in the low road, I'll use cards to be like, here's what the high road of that looks like, or, here's how we're dealing with the situation. So I'll weave that in. If someone just wants a tarot reading or is uninterested in the astrology or doesn't have their birth time, I do offer those separately. So you can have them as separate services. But generally, when I'm doing an astrology reading, I'll use my cards also if it calls for it.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. That's really
Mhm.
good. And then do you do follow-up services as well? So, or is it just like a one-off, like,
Nope.
no?
Yeah, so I do follow up services because one of the main things I like to use all of this for again is like self development, self understanding, self knowledge. So one of my favorite things to do is I'll do an astrology and tarot combination where it's the sun, moon, and rising. It's your big three personality. Most people will talk about that, and I'll pull a card for each of those. Like, how are you acting in this personality right now? What's coming next, and how do you get to the highest expression of this? What does that look like, type of thing. And people do like to follow up on that. So I've got a rate, like an hourly rate to just do your standard birth chart for the first time, a one-off. And then I have an hourly rate to do follow-up astrology. A lot of people, myself included, like to talk about that with people, because astrology is really based on interpretations. There's key associations with everything, but it is storytelling. So, if you and I were both astrologers, we could look at the same chart and tell the story a slightly different way. So I like to work with people to learn how to read their own story, to make their own interpretations, because I'm a firm believer in, I never want to preach that, like, I'm the only astrologer, or any astrologer is the only one that's going to be able to show you this. No, if you learned how to see it through this lens, you'd also be able to learn. So yes, I offer an hourly rate to just have those conversations, further study, that type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's important, because if you do, let's say you did a reading for me, right, and I was shown aspects of my personality or my high road that I hadn't been aware of. And then I suddenly, what happens is when you become conscious of something, then all of a sudden it starts to show up in your life.
Yeah.
So then and I start to see evidence of that, then I probably would want to go further with you with respect to bringing more of that into play and into conscious awareness. So I think it's great that you've got that going on. And are you have you written books as well? I know you're a poet, but do you have any books written?
Yes. So currently I have one book that was co-authored by two other poets, produced by the Wright Factory, which was excellent. So that's a book it's all a book of spiritual poems, of every nature. We were given like 24 topics to write these poems on. And when I was invited into the project, I was like, oh, that's great. I probably have about 18 of these topics written already, because this is exactly what I write on. So it was everything from inner child healing to trauma to ascension and those kinds of things. So I've got that book out right now. Fractal Reflections Scroll 2. That's on Amazon. And I finally finished categorizing all the rest of the poetry that I had just been publishing on social media. I hadn't been keeping track of it anywhere else. So now I'm in the process of formulating a few different books of poetry, different themes involved. So, and then one whole one that's dedicated to all the poems I've written for my daughter over the years. She's 5 now, and her name is Willow. And the symbolism, like I said, all of my poems have been metaphors. The symbolism of willow trees is beyond. So
Yeah.
there's been many, many that have stemmed from that. So yeah.
And your daughter's perfectly healthy now, right?
She's perfectly healthy. Perfectly healthy. She's in speech therapy and some things like that, but I'm glad that she's got extra support and all those things. And she's what I would define as a miracle. So I couldn't possibly be happier. I also have an almost 5-month-old son. So I'm a very happy mama, very happy mystical mama. Can't complain.
Excellent. Yeah, and of course your kids benefit from that as well, right? Because even if you're not speaking to them directly about who you are and what you offer and all of that, your state speaks for you.
Yes.
Your connection with spirit or source itself,
yes,
communicates with your children. I mean, that's just the way it works.
Yes.
And
well,
yeah.
And astrology has helped me in that end as well. Like, mothering is not a cookie cutter thing. We're all different kinds of mothers, and all of our children are different as well. And so referencing their astrology charts while I'm nurturing and loving them has, for the 5-month-old, we haven't had that much, stuff, but with my 5-year-old daughter, I realized, once a month she was like really sensitive, and it hadn't even clicked to me like that. Then I was like, she has a Cancer moon. She's a very sensitive girl. And when the moon goes into Cancer every month for 2 or 3 days, those are the days where she's like, either, if I'm not aware of it or paying attention, very extra, like a little whiny or crabby. If I'm aware of it ahead of time, those are the days where she's like, mommy cuddles. And I'm like, yep, I'm right all over it, So it's like being aware of astrology, being aware of her chart has helped me be a better mother in the ways that she needs me to be, you know? So it's really been an eye-opening, beautiful experience to be able to be a mother while using that as a tool for not only my self-awareness, but to be aware of them as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun. And you said that you do charts for women who are expecting, and you do charts for children as well.
Yes. So in I without a birth date, I mean, I could do a tarot reading on the pregnancy and that kind of thing, but without a birth date, I wouldn't want to assume anything.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I do them about children, I don't, how do I want to word this? When I do predictive astrology, I'm always doing predictive based off of this is the energy that's showing up right now. You could have a breakthrough revelation tomorrow, and everything that I said is irrelevant because you're going to change the trajectory in something's. And when you're looking at astrology, this is where the planets were. This is how it is. But it is always up to you how you want to function within that knowledge or
Mm-hmm.
awareness. So, you know, I am never in the business of saying this is how it's going to go, definitely. Based on current events right now, this is what I see. Based on this is what the potentials are, type of thing. Because everyone's in control of their own life, not an astrology chart or a card reading. So,
Yeah, yeah. But the reason I was asking about children, so if you have a parent or parents who come to you and want a chart reading, let's say for their 8-year-old,
mhm.
10-year-old, do you have like limits in terms of what age you start to do that, or you would do that?
No, not at all. I would do that at any age. And it would basically, because also in astrology, you can see developmental milestones. You know, if someone came to me with their 8-year-old child and was saying, you know, I had this kind of rough experience in my high school years, and I'm wondering, you know, what's going to happen for my child. I can look at the chart and see which houses planets are placed within to see when things might be affecting, when there might be a time coming up of like, you know, around this time, they're really going to be dealing with this planet moving back to this position. That's going to bring them into this area of self-discovery, or they might be experiencing these kind of things. So no, it's never too young. I just would always tell parents, you know, if you're prepared for the potential of events, then you can be there to support them. Just don't assume how they're going to be going through it. Just be able to be there so you can touch base and be like, hey, are you okay with all of that? Not like, I know that you're going through this horrible time, or, you know, again, just be able to be there. But yes, any age, there's never too early.
Fantastic. And do
Mhm.
you do that? Do you do those for your family members as well? Do you do astrology readings for them too?
Yes. So some of my family are not as open to all of my methods and ways. Some of my family are not like me in that way. But a lot of them, yes, have taken a look. Recently, I started talking to my sister about her astrology and the different things. Um, so they're slowly becoming more interested. It's never been much of their forte, but I've done my own readings on their charts to assess, like, oh, this is why we have this relationship. I see. And to be honest, a few years back when I had hit the point, it was like I got to the stage of spiritual awakening where I realized I had been not seeing everything. And now I'm seeing so much more. And I'll just be fully honest, I hit the arrogance point of that spiritual awakening where it was like, wow, if you don't know what I know and you're
Yes, yeah,
living life, you know, in the matrix and all of that,
yeah,
then you
yeah,
do. And so my siblings and I, you know, spent probably a couple months not talking. And then I made my amends, like I was arrogant and a jerk, and that was not necessary. And however, I also still, you know, I'm going to live my life this way and you're going to do your way. But at that point, they started seeing more. So we've had a little bit more of a, coming to terms or seeing eye to eye with that, I suppose.
yeah. And all of this is really beneficial because I think that's everybody's story. When you have a shift of consciousness or awakening or whatever, there can be a period where there's a bit of arrogance that comes in, and there can be an us and them kind of view. They
Yeah.
don't know and they're not awake and all of that. But that, if you're wise and you do your inner work, that soon passes because you realize that everybody's moving through life and through their own awakening at their own speed and time, and you can't predict it, and you have to honor wherever people are and honor where you are yourself, and all of that. And there's a lot of humility with respect to waking up and going through that process of self-recognition, and it's all beautiful, and like you said, there's value in the pain. And it's all about weaving the magic. It's about seeing the magic in your pain points and pain stories and so on, and understanding that it all has value and it all fits together in a really beautiful way.
Yes, absolutely. It's definitely become the most tender part of my heart to express that openly. And if I might, I just wanted to kind of just weave this in. I'm about to release, and by the time that this video airs, it will be released, a course that's like, if you've not had an astrology chart, or if you've not delved into the journey of self-discovery, I basically have taken the way that I did this through astrology and formulated a course to really take you into the depths of yourself, just right from the get. I'm calling it My Sacred Moon. It's an honor to my own pain story. It's an honor to my own, I thought I was too sensitive. And then when I grew through that wound, this is why I wanted to reference it. Not too long ago, I wrote a poem about how I had that point of arrogance. I called it Becoming a Narcissist, in order to heal my way too empathetic doormat type of situation. But really, as soon as I started regarding myself as sacred, but not more sacred than other people, that's why the course is My Sacred Moon, because each of us, our inner emotional world, the way that we experience this world is sacred. And if we aren't connected to it, if we aren't there, we don't feel that so much. We feel like, maybe the victim of our story, or maybe like the bystander, or the, just silent observer that doesn't really get a say. And I really feel like my whole purpose has been to recognize that the pain is sacred. The story that you can weave of it is sacred. The way that you can learn yourself through that is sacred. It's all sacred for all of us. And so I'm grateful to have lived that experience and be able to cultivate a way to help. So
wonderful. Oh, I'm glad you shared that, because I was about to say we're coming towards the end of our time together. And I was going to invite you to let people know where they can find you. But let's just backtrack a bit with respect to the course. When does the course go live?
So I'm actually the course will begin on May 6th. I'll be making an announcement about it next week. So before this video airs, it'll take place via Zoom calls. There's a face group component of it. So a very small, intimate group. I'll only be doing 4 people at a time, so that we can really feel safe enough to share vulnerable things. So it'll be one-on-one coursework with me, and a group component starting on May 6th. And I'll have signups coming before then. So, fantastic. And you can find that. All my social medias are Weaving the Magick. Again, Magic is MAGICK. Weavingthemagick.com is where you can find all the information about the course and sign up. I've got a little questionnaire to fill out there to, see where your readiness is as far as starting something like that. But you can book all of my services through my website as well.
Fantastic. Brilliant. So Kelly, thank you so much for joining me today, and for sharing and being so open, to share your painful process. It's really very powerful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you everybody for joining us today. As always, I really appreciate you spending the time here on Talking True. If you value the content, then let people know, spread the word. And if you haven't already subscribed, you know what to do. So that's all from me and from Kelly today. Again, thank you for joining us, and see you soon. Bye.